What's up, and welcome back to the greatest teacher of all time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color to highlight their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and visit greatestteacherofalltime.com to help me support other great teachers like Miss Fong. What's up, Margaret?
Hi, Quincy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for being here. You're doing a lot online. You've been teaching for a while, and I think you have some really good insight on some questions I have.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to get started.
Yeah. So maybe first off, how long have you been teaching? What are you teaching exactly?
So, my name is Margaret. I am a teacher in Toronto, Canada. This is my 11th year teaching. Teaching is actually my second career. So, I was in corporate world before. I have taught from grade 4 to grade 8 students. I've taught instrumental music. I've taught ESL. And this year, I'm teaching a grade 4-5 split class.
Wow. Okay, so that is a lot, right? Um, First of all, you've been teaching for 11 years. What is making you stay in the field so long? Like, you must really like it.
Oh, it is a bunch of things. And I did make a video about this of why I love teaching and why I moved into the vocation of teaching. First and foremost, it always is the kids. Like it is the kids. They bring a new set of life, like such new ideas. I learn something new every day. And they do bring a lot of joy. I think for me, teachers are truly a different make. Like we are quote unquote lifelong learners. And I can guarantee anyone who's teaching, like every year is truly different. Like I may be teaching the same grade, but every year you get a new group of kids. And you learn so much. And just as much, I'm not my first year teaching, but every year you learn things that work, things that don't work. I mean, I can definitely say post pandemic, things have changed exponentially in ways that it's so hard to put into one clip. But I'm learning so much, and I'm really happy that I'm able to learn with my students as well and be able to have the privilege to teach them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best way to look at it. We're like, this is our privilege to get to teach these
Yeah,
students, like, and have like such an impact on their lives.
it really is. Like, it is, yeah, that word privilege, like, it's their parents, their caregivers. I have kids myself. Kids are in school for a big chunk of their day, if not most of their day, and then they go home and eat and go to bed, right? So most of the time they are under my care, under in our classroom together. So it is a huge responsibility and a huge privilege to be able to teach and influence them.
Yeah, and with fourth and fifth graders, you are literally with them all day. I did high
Yeah,
school, so
yeah,
I got to like rotate out, but that is all day.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But again, with your 11 years in teaching, I'm sure you've seen a lot. I've seen you've grown a lot. But I actually want to bring up this post on Instagram from a page called Fixing Education. And it's a picture, and it just says schools are now structured so that 95% of student misbehaviors essentially have zero consequences. And that's horrible for schools overall. So I have my take on this, US, the American schools. You are in Toronto, Canada. Is this true? Like, do you initially agree? Do you disagree? Where do you see yourself on this?
When I first saw that, it made me think of, I mean, times have changed. I think when we were all not out of choice, we had to be online. It was very hard to administer consequences for misbehavior, if not misbehavior that we did not even know about because it was online and if cameras were off. I think now that we are back and things are quote unquote kind of getting back to normal, it may be a shock to some students, to some parents for our school community of the fact that yes, your actions affect others and there's a cause and there's a consequence. When I saw that quote, I thought about, in my class, I have classroom management and I have my set of rules and my consequences. If I don't have that support from admin, then that's very hard to back up. And I'm not just talking about support, I'm talking about consistent support, right? Kids are very smart. I have kids of my own. If they know that they can get away with something, they're going to run with that. They're smart, right? So I've had situations where I'm actually very blessed right now. We just have a new admin, and this admin has been really on top of it, very supportive, um, deals with things in a timely fashion, I would say. And I think that's so important. So I'm blessed in that sense that I'm in school like that. And you can see the whole school environment has changed positively because of that. I've also been at schools where admin is not as engaged or as consistent as I would have wanted them to be to get that support. And that's where I think that quote, where it takes me to where if there's a cause, what's the consequence? And we're not being consistent in our messages in the classroom and outside with admin, then that can definitely run into problems or issues and challenges.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. It's the consistent support from the admin who's helping you out with this, right? Because you can
Yes.
have your own consequences for maybe not doing homework or being out of your seat or things like that. But if they're
Yeah,
not backing you up in what you're saying, it means nothing.
exactly. And remember, like we said, with kids of any age, they're smart and they pick up on these things. And so it's important to be consistent.
Yeah, consistent. And you're right. There's kids are smart, maybe sometimes too smart for their own good.
Yeah.
But thumbing through the comments, I was thinking, are the consequences that you and your admin implement, are they meaningful consequences? Because, for example, on the comments, I see people saying things that schools do have consequences, like losing recess or detention. But then another person commenting saying something like, yeah, but I've had parents come in and remove their kids from detention if they don't agree with
Oh,
it.
wow.
Right.
Mm,
So I've never had that, but I can imagine it happening. So do you
for
think the
sure.
consequences that we implement are actually meaningful when a parent can just take them out?
I think at the end of the day, it's always, it does go back like it takes a village. Like if we don't have that parent guardian support, there's only so much that we can do. And if that parent decides to remove the child, I think it ends there. Like what can you do about it, right? So it takes a village. And I think for all of us, as long as we at school, we all have the child like and the children's safety in mind, that's our first and foremost, like that is what we our priority is. We're putting that in mind. And as like hopefully the parents and guardians know it is all because we care about the child. It starts there. I think the consequences, it does depend on each child. For some children, staying at recess is like, ooh, like that it may not be an applicable consequence for that behavior for that child. I think it's important for the classroom teacher to be involved along with admin to work out a consequence that, like I say, it should hurt a little. Like it should make the child sit and reflect on what the behavior, what was done.
Yeah, I hear that. And I like how you're saying like the purpose of the consequence is to reflect, right? Like it should never
Right.
be too harsh where like the punishment takes away from my time to think and reflect on what I actually did. I hear that.
Exactly. For sure. It shouldn't be so much that they're focused on, oh, I cannot go out for recess or I can't or can do this, where it should be like, why am I here? Should I have done that? Right. Maybe next time I won't do that again because I don't want this to happen again.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about that, the reflection. Man, Margaret, you definitely do have a lot of insight on this. Funny, I usually talk to a lot of teachers who are like in their first couple years of teaching, but in your 11th year, I think you have a really good insight on this next one I'm going to ask. So, I'm curious about you being a fourth, fifth grade teacher, teaching like complex subjects to them. For example, like math or history, right? So maybe for me, for example, when I was in school, I liked math, but I was never actually really good at it, right? Where it was when I was in taking calculus in high school, like I got a D in it. And it wasn't till I retook it when I was in college with maybe a more developed brain where I actually understood, where it clicked for me, right? So
Right.
how do you feel about teaching these complex subjects like math and like fourth grade is what like pre-algebra? That's what fifth grade is, pre-algebra, right?
We do we do have algebra strand. Um, yeah, but I can tell you that's a strand that is it's hard for them. That may be the hardest one. I talk about it in my posts as well. But how do I teach these complex subjects to students, especially those that are so young? Like we're talking lower elementary, right? Um, I think, especially I love math. With subjects like this, I always start off with, I understand. I was also that student that I did it anyways, but it was, I would be the one asking in calculus, like, why do we need to find the derivative? Like, what, when am I going to use this? And I think that is really important as a student to question. When I start off a math concept, for example, and I create my own resources, I start off with a minds on, but my minds on is a real life scenario of how what we're talking about is going to apply in real life. So, for example, financial literacy, right? We have this new strand in Ontario. How am I going to start off with financial literacy to a grade 4 student? It could be something on the wall there that says, or I project on the board, um, your parents bought a car, they go to the dealership. How are they going to pay for it? What's the method of payment? And so, for some students this may or may not be applicable. It could be a car, it could be a book, it could be whatever it is. How are they going to pay for it? And then so students actually, it starts sparking off, oh, I know, like my parents have used a credit card, or they pull out cash, or they take out their phone and they swipe it. And so when I make that first connection, now students are saying, oh yeah, I know what we're learning about. And then I would say, so with that, this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about methods of payment. So I think it's really important to hook those students in, because you're going to get the students saying, why am I learning this? Well, this is why you're learning it. And now we're going to get into details of it.
Yeah, and man, I'm stuck on what you said in the very beginning of that, right? When you were in calculus asking, what is the derivative? Why am I finding the derivative? I personally love derivatives and integrals and all that, but like you had that calculus brain to ask, what is a derivative? Why, right? Like that complex question. What is the equivalent of that for a fourth or fifth grade? Like, what is the complex question that you would want them to ask? Is it like, what is a
Um,
percentage? Why do we do percentage? Like, what is that translation?
I think anything that I feel like higher level, like it's not so much like, um, why do we need, it's not so much of like, why do we need to know how to take out a ruler and measure something? Because we learn about that like length in grade 4, but it's more of like, Miss, why do we need both centimeters? And then we need to know why, how many millimeters? Like, why do we have to convert? Is essentially what they're saying, not in that language, but they'll say, like, why do I need to know millimeters and centimeters? Why can't I just use both? And that's more of making those connections of, oh, we've been learning about centimeters, we've been learning about millimeters, and now in grade 4, we're learning about meters and kilometers. Like, why are you giving me all these units of measure? And so it makes you think, like, oh, they are progressing in the terms of they remember what they learned. And now they're trying to think, like, why am I learning about this stuff? And that's how we can, as teachers, we're supposed to help them connect the dots.
Okay, okay. And maybe switching gears for the same question, but for a subject like history, right? Admittedly, I do not remember my fifth grade history curriculum, but I do remember my fourth grade history was, or social studies, it was all focusing on like California government. Like, what is the governor doing? Like, what is secretary doing? All that, right? And I think, at least today, I think it's difficult to get a fourth grader to understand this is the mindset of a governor, right? This is the
Mm-hmm.
mindset of a mayor, right? How do you get them to understand those type of things? Again, I don't know the Toronto curriculum. Is it? Do you guys have governors?
Government is in grade 5, yeah. So I do
Okay.
teach government. I really enjoy teaching government because I find that that is they do see it like that my students, like they do see their children, or sorry, they see their parents, if it's voting, or every few years we will have our or municipal elections or provincial or federal elections. So they see it, they see the signs out on people's lawns who are promoting whatever party it is, right? So I think it's still hard, yes, at that age, you're 9, 10 years old, like, you know, what exactly does the government do? But I think they do know that they must do something. And it's up to us to make that connection of, well, when you go to the library, who pays for the library? Where does that come from? In here in Ontario, we've had uh last year, this year, we've had strikes, right? So with not teachers, but support education workers. And so students are firsthand impacted when education workers are on strike, they can't go to school, right? So it's really important that, yeah, they may hear something at school, but they also hear the other side of, well, what are education workers, what are they asking for? What are the both sides? Because there are always two sides to the story. Um, I think what has been really interesting though, in terms of specifically maybe social studies at the younger grade, is the fact that social media and media is so much more available, right? So they hear about this either on the news or they scroll because parents or older siblings have TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is. So students, at this age, they're still young, but they may still get snippets here and there, but they may not get the full story. So that's where our job as the teacher, we are to help them piece all those together and give them the full story, get them to understand social media, first of all, that it could be one side, but it's important to get different sides and different sources as well. So it's all, I'm just talking about this right now, it's all cross curricular, right? It's social studies, it's media, it's language, all of that is all intertwined together. And times are changing. And I think, as a teacher, it's so much more, even more important to help them make those connections.
Yeah, definitely making those connections. And again, I guess it just goes back to my thought on the complex questions were like, are they able to really articulate what they're thinking and ask the questions that they actually need to know, right? As opposed to just regurgitating what the teacher says.
Yes, for sure. And I think, that goes into classroom management, classroom environment. And I have posted about this before. If you have a question, I welcome the question. I have been, in the corporate world where it's like, just ask it. I'd rather you ask it in a respectful way, obviously. I welcome it, because I think everyone else may have the same question. So as long as students ask it respectfully, I would like to answer you, because I think that's where a lot of the learning happens. And it's up to me as a teacher to make sure I guide it back to whatever we're learning at hand to bring it back there.
Yeah, and that kind of perfectly leads us to my next topic on like how well the students are with taking that information in. So I kind of want to talk about grades right now. So being a teacher for 11 years, what actually before I get in, what is your relationship with grades? Like what actually is an A plus or a B minus?
So in Ontario, we do have like a document. It's called the Growing Success document that tells us we grade in middle school like the letter grades, but we also grade in terms of, they're called levels, like level one, two, three, four. There's level one minus, one plus, and all of them pertain to a letter grade, which also translate to a percentage if you're teaching higher grades. So we do have guidance on that. Your B is like the average, which is you're meeting curriculum expectations. You're doing what is expected of you, right? My level four is what you call it, or your A's and A pluses, I would say is going above and beyond. And when I say that, we talk about it with my students. So this year I have been co-creating rubrics with students, where I would give them the headings, like it could be, let's say, a PSA poster. I would give them the headings of content, originality, effort. And then we would talk about, well, what's a level four and what's a level one? What would that look like? And we create it together. Students are very, very capable of filling this out. They already know what I expect of them, because I like to give detailed feedback whenever I hand out projects. And so when we talk about level four, we talk about the verbs of exceeding, going above and beyond, consistently, right? And so those are words, and we talk about, what does consistent mean? It doesn't mean one time, it doesn't mean two times, it means every single time, right? That you show me that you are going above and beyond. I will give students exemplars, or I'll show them pictures. So for example, I had one year we were doing short stories. And so I took pictures of stuff from previous years, and I said, well, what do you think a level four looks like? And they said, yeah, it's not just content, but just think about, how are you going to stand out from the average? Because level three is your average, you're meeting expectations. And I showed them a picture of a student one year who created a book. Like, the student wrote the short story, made it into a hardcover, bound it, the student bound it herself, and added illustrations. Did I ask for that? No, but this is clearly above and beyond. And so this deserves your A plus, level four plus, whatever it is that how you're marking.
Yeah, and personally, rubrics are my favorite way of grading, right? Because you have a clear, concise way to like grade. Okay, check this box. You didn't check that box. But I think what you were saying, the hardest part is defining those words, right? Consistency went above. Like, wait, what is above, right? How
Right.
often does consistent mean, right? So yeah, what do you think those grades you're giving again based off these rubrics? What do you think they actually mean to these elementary school students? Because I guess you were saying that in middle school you start with the A, B, C, D, but before that's like one, two, three, four, right?
So in kindergarten, you don't get grades. Starting from 1 to 6, you'll get the letters, and then 7 to 8, you get the percentages. And
Gotcha.
then, sorry, 7 all the way up to high school, you get percentages.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
So what do those letters mean to your fifth graders?
yeah, I think I'm going to answer in terms of what does it mean to the student versus what it means to the parent,
That's what I
because I
want.
think those are different.
Yeah.
So with the students, whenever I hand things back, it is flip to the last page and see what grade I got, right? And so they want to see the letter. I think they know intuitively, A is like the highest, and then R is not pass, and D, and it goes CB, right? A. So they know that.
Wait, did you say
That's
wait, sorry, did you say R?
R is you did not pass. Yeah,
Okay,
so we
that's
use
funny.
R.
That's F out here.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
think it used to be F and then they made it R. So remedial. So when I know this happens. I was a child myself, so I know this. That's why whenever I do hand something back, specifically any test that I mark, I we go through all the answers, especially math. We go through the answers. Math builds on top of each other. In language, so if this was a writing assignment, and language, like you say, I love rubrics too, because you have subjects such as language, which can be quite subjective, right? And so at least they have a rubric there for the student and the parents saying that, well, this is how I'm marking. So this is how I'm going to give you the grade. So when it's something with like language, I will sit down and I will conference with each student, telling them why they got what they got. Otherwise, can I guarantee they're going to read all my comments that I spent hours on? No, unless they sit with me and I will go through it with them. That's what we do for letter grades when I hand things back for specifically writing. Um, so for the students, they want to see the letter, but I really want them to make sure I sit down with them in conference to make sure they know why they got it, and then what can they do to improve. Because that's what we want as a teacher, right? We want them to get the grade. Our goal is to get our students to improve in whatever subject or whatever they want to focus on. We want to help them improve. For the parents, because I'm a parent myself, I think it's important, yeah, to look at the letter grades, but I do like to look at the comments whenever my kids get things back. I like to see, well, what's my constructive feedback for my child, and how can I help my child improve in the future, whatever subject it is, right? So, um, as a parent, I do look at the grades, but I also like to look at the comments. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but we have what's called learning skills here. So skills such as responsibility, independence, um, what
Is
I'm just
is
thinking out loud.
this is this specific to your school or that's all of
Ontario. This is Ontario. And then you'll get, it's not a grade, it's you either get needs improvement, satisfactory, good, or excellent. So these are what I would call, in corporate sense, the soft skills, right, that are really important, that are beyond the academics. And that's what I look at as a parent as well. I really need to look at those because those are the skills that carry forward. Academics is academics. Not everyone is strong in academics. I can understand that. But these are the skills that are going to help you build and learn and grow and succeed. So I do want to also look at those other soft skills as well that are important.
yeah, and I love that how the grade isn't just a stagnant letter or a number, right? Like there's meaning behind it. You know,
Yes, for sure.
yeah, and I feel like so I've been at public schools, independent schools, charter schools, home schools, and it feels like at most of them the letter grade is all the information you're presented with maybe some preset comments that you can put up from the district that they gave you, right? Like needs improvement or pleasure to have in class. That don't really mean
Right.
much. It was actually at my independent school, my private school I was at, where I think it was twice a school year we had to give them their grade, of course, but also write like a short paragraph describing what does this grade mean, how the student performed, and what you're doing in your class. And it wasn't just a copy and paste. All right, this is my first period, this is my second period. It's specific to each student,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think that just adds so much value to this letter grade or this percentage.
For sure. Yeah. And well, that's how we do it here. Like I write comments for each student.
And that,
And they are,
and I'm sorry, and that
yes,
is everywhere or just your school?
Ontario. It's for Ontario. The
Okay,
teachers write
I love that.
comments.
I love that.
Yeah. I think it's different for high school. So I know elementary, we write, everything. I have a document. That's why it takes so long. That's why you see all these posts about teachers. When report card time comes, is because we look at each student. When I talked about the learning skills, we talked about responsibility, initiative, independent work, and it is pertaining to that specific student. And we give next steps as well, right? Like specifically, how can this person improve in this specific learning skill? And so they're very um, individualized for the student.
Yeah, individualized. That is the key to make those grades valuable. Yeah. Miss Fong, I love it. This has been great. Your insight on grades, discipline in schools, how you teach your math and science or social studies classes. They're all part of the reasons why I think you might be one of the greatest teachers of all time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you deserve it. You deserve it. And thanks to Transcendence Children and Family Services, I actually want to present you with this $100 gift card to use with you or your students, wherever you choose.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Quincy, for having me on. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot from you as well. This is such a great opportunity. Thank you so much for everything that you do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And these are chances for just teachers to just talk and bounce ideas back and forth. It's great. Thank you for being on, the greatest teacher of all time.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. And also with the support of Everyday Educate, we'd actually like to sponsor your class with a class pizza party.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just another way to show to your students and the other admin at your school that you are the greatest teacher of all time. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone else for watching The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I interview teachers of color to highlight their personalities, strategies, and philosophies. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you really liked it, leave a comment for me and Ms. Fong to see. Also, if you are the greatest teacher of all time, or if you know the greatest teacher of all time, recommend a teacher to me. Go to greatestteacherofalltime.com and click on Submit a Teacher. Hope to see you soon.